Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Meagle Podcast. Devin did a decent job at cueing me in today. I'm going to shout him out really quick because I could at least hear the music. You'll get to it, Devin. But we've got a super dope guest today. If you're interested in land development, commercial buildings, that kind of thing, we've got Aric Greco on. And Aric, we kind of met each other through a good friend, Jamie.
Yes.
And it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for joining us today, man.
Yeah, absolutely nice to be here.
Yeah, it is. Hey, it's a pleasure. You know what? We'll make the handshake the thumbnail. I love that. So Aric, give us a little background on who you are, because you've got a really interesting job title. And there's a lot of stuff that you do, and we'll be cognizant of what we can and cannot talk about today. But give me a little background on like what you do, just in general, and how you got into development.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So me and Jamie Isherwood, we both kind of work on commercial, residential land development side, as well as redevelopment projects, and basically anything. But we also kind of service residential clients as well.
Gotcha.
Just kind of like full circle, but also more focus on commercial and residential land development. And we kind of got started on that. Like he's been a realtor for 20 years.
Jamie's been in it for a while.
Yeah, and
he tells me the stories.
Very well seasoned. I'm fairly new. I've only been a realtor for about a year and a half. But I had a background. Like I'm also a licensed industrial steam fitter.
Wow.
I held a ticket in that. I don't. That's kind of a background. I used to be a planner as well. So having the planning background, dealing with distribution piping, sewer, water, natural gas, all the lifeblood, arterial bloodline of development.
Yeah, what makes the economy run.
That you need, especially for anything new construction, kind of gave me a good transition of like where I need to focus, like contacts, city planners, and that kind of aided that transition on like how I focus and approach real estate.
Now there's a lot of I was shocked when I first started recording real estate. I was shocked at how many avenues like somebody could make money or have a job title in real estate. There's realtors, there's stagers, there's videographers, there's photographers, there's developers, there's mortgage brokers, insurance brokers. I mean, it's ridiculous how many different job titles there are just inside real estate and inside the industry alone. So why did you choose to focus more on development? Was it something that you kind of just found yourself doing more of, or was it something that you were like, I'm going to do this right away when I get into real estate?
No, actually I started off in res. I still do a bit of residential, but fully started out in res. And then also like when you're working on off-market listings, off-market deals, when you have something of value, you don't really know what to do with it. A good lead is nothing if you can't move it, right? Like depending on who you know and who like the contacts and the circle of people that you could successfully move that, especially if you don't have a listing or you're working on off-market properties, trying to connect two people and have a meeting of the minds. Having that circle is like really important. So I kind of had that and didn't have like a proper circle to get these leads through a trusted network. And that's when I met Jamie. We had a really large parcel of land, and that's one of the first people I entrusted with, bringing it to the right people, getting it reviewed. A lot of off-market real estate in general is if it's been circulated in the networks too much, no one wants it.
Yeah.
If it's on MLS, they don't want it.
They don't want.
So
interesting.
So it's not like it's a little bit different than residential when relying on MLS to be the main aid in marketing your product.
Now, I guess my question is, how do you? Because I know I've talked to Jamie, and now even hearing from you, relationships is literally the number one thing in what you guys do. Especially more so, not even just like residential. That's you need good relationship building skills and a good network. But that's you're preparing to list on MLS. This is off market. You've got to find a buyer. First of all, you need a seller, but you got to find a buyer for these high ticketed pieces of land. What is the process like for you? How much can you expand on just like building relationships, building a network? I'm sure knowing Jamie probably helps, but not to say the least, like you've definitely built up your own network as well. So how have you kind of done that as much as you can give us?
Yeah, so I think like the difference like between that, obviously there's a lot of crossover, but One thing that I would kind of eliminate from that is like how sometimes on the residential side, definitely it's part of your job to maintain the emotional aspect of the purchase, which is a really big aspect on residential. People, like, it's the biggest purchase of someone's life, and like they're not looking at it like always as a investment or
a logistical,
they're looking for a home.
Yeah.
They want to make something their home, right? So it can be you have to like take care of them on the like professional side, but also on the emotional side, and making sure their feelings are validated, that like it's going to be a good purchase for them. And that's a lot less prevalent on the commercial side as well. Like that's mostly numbers based driven, and like, main thing is like providing like accurate, concise information,
Right.
To the client, so they can make a good educated decision on the purchase.
And being able to give them those educated decisions over time, because you deal with, or at least you and Jamie deal with more like investor types, you're able to, build those strong relationships over multiple purchases, and then they really start to trust you, right? Like anything, I guess, right? Right out the get-go, some people might not trust you right away, but then doing more deals with them, they slowly begin to build that trust.
And continually bring them opportunities. Like
that's
bring
a big
them enough
one, eh?
opportunities until they say, I'm full, I'm done.
Yeah.
That's what you kind of want. You want to be able to continually feed their appetite.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you sell, land, valuable pieces of land, and we're seeing now more and more like land is obviously just as much as, a house is increasing in value, but primarily land, and it's high ticketed pieces of land, high value, what a lot of people want. Can you give us the logistics on purchasing a piece of land, like from the bank to, do you have to find lenders? Do you really just kind of break it down for us? Because I don't even really fully understand the difference between buying land and the difference between buying a home. What is something like a new person should know?
Well, in terms of financing, the bank has to have something that they can insure, which a home is insurable. So like in particular, say you're looking at a vacant parcel of land, the bank doesn't have, like, they're still like valuing off the land value. There's not like an insurable asset on that piece of land. So they'll typically give you around 50% of the land value.
Oh, okay.
And then you still have to come up with a large portion of the funds, which is typically maybe done through a secondary lender. If it's not done through an A lender, it'll go private, and depending on the project, have to just factor in a higher interest rate in their return.
That makes a lot of sense, right? Because from my understanding, if you're not going to the bank, you're going to like a private lender, they're going to charge more in interest because they're not the bank.
Well, yeah, and it's just probably a little bit higher risk for the lender.
Fair enough, yeah,
so
right?
So they are taking and that's just pretty standard rate for private lending.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, actually. So basically what you're saying is, let's say I have a $5 million piece of land where it's valued, right? Mm-hmm. The bank will give me a $2.5 million
sometimes, yeah.
Around there,
yeah,
like in a mortgage kind of, or an insurable. Is that the right terminology, or?
Yeah, like I typically, like a lot of the people that we work with do like deal with private lending anyway, so like it's not too much of an issue on like that. So I can't speak to too much on like an A lender like lending on raw land, but yeah.
Now the value in land, do you personally see more value in land or more value in buying homes? What would you do? So
yeah, I think the question that would definitely be land will always have value, and a home, like typically when you're valuing land, so you have a home that is on like a 10-acre piece of land, that the actual home is actually only 25% of the land value.
Right.
It's actually surprisingly less. You're not when you're not valuing it on like a 40 by 100 lot, like a builder lot. That's you're valuing the home. But on the flip side, if you're valuating the land and you need to factor in the home is actually a very small portion of that valuation. And you can always build a new home, but you can never create more land.
Interesting. So that's where that's where like the really intrinsic value holds in land.
Especially as the dollar devalues, like a real physical asset, like all real physical assets are increasing in value.
Okay, so can I ask you a challenging question, which you don't have to answer, but that talk of intrinsic value, like something that actually is like tangible. You might know what I'm getting at. As for, you know, talks of crypto or NFTs or like the digital space of currencies, what are your thoughts and opinions on? You can give a balanced view if you want to. You don't have to say your opinion on it, but what are your thoughts? What pros and cons should we weigh for, you know, a more online, in my opinion, untangible source, and tangible like land, which will, without question, always have value more than, in my opinion, the metaverse land, which you can just create, right?
Yeah. I don't know if you're referencing maybe like digital real estate. I think that the way that we purchase tangible assets will change, like
interesting,
and transfer onto the blockchain, but the actual value of what you're purchasing with that new digital technology will transfer back more to actual assets instead of like move away from our currency.
I was going
to
say
tangible assets is what so you can borrow against them. They have their value. There will always be a real thing.
And I mean, it goes back down to like, you know, let's say you buy a house with 10 acres on it or something, right? A lot of people might, or like, for example, a home, a lot of people will want to refinance it, right? And then take that money, reinvest into another home. I mean, house hacking 101, right? What everybody or whatever investor's goal is to do is to just leverage 100 properties, right? But you can't do that in digital metaverse.
Yeah, I think that's still a very unproven like concept. I see people purchasing a farm in
5 million, 6 million.
I don't know.
So how does one, because not to toot your horn here or anything, but like you do sell very high value pieces of land. You represent, you know, unknown, but very, I'm assuming, valuable people. How does one get to that point? Like, you know, I could become a real estate agent and, you know, maybe sell like $400,000 or $500,000 piece of land, maybe, you know, 1.3 million if I got a place down here in Niagara Lake for, you know, it's less than an acre. It's going for that much now. But how does one get into, you know, really high piece, $5, $10, $20 million piece of land and selling that and representing the buyer and the seller? Like what does that process look like to build that?
Well, I think it actually starts in like traditionally when you're from a certain brokerage, you kind of like stay within your own brokerage, and it's like very foreign to network with other brokerages.
Interesting.
So I think, especially on the residential side, but on the commercial side, networking with other agents from other brokerages in a very, because like the circle is not extremely big, and like a lot of people know a lot of people, so there's a lot of crossover of clients, and so like kind of like, you know, even though you're working from another brokerage, working on the same team, you're all trying to get the same thing done, and that's to get that deal for their client, and you're trying to get that deal for your client. So there's a lot of crossover, and then, you know, a lot of that networking is through other agents that are looking for stuff. So, you know, they have buyers or they have sellers. So you're kind of like networking. My advice would be to not be afraid to network outside your brokerage. And
that's really, I guess, thinking backwards in a way, but it seems like it's obviously worked.
Obviously within your brokerage as well, but I just mean like as a whole with like all throughout the like Niagara and GTA, like don't be afraid to, you know, meet up and, you know, you pay your fees and do whatever you got to do like to your brokerage, but, you know, that doesn't mean you can't, you know, work as same team or work together to get the same common goal done.
Right. Because at the end of the day, you know, everybody wants to make money in business, right? So if it's a win-win for everybody, great. What, you know what I mean?
Everything has to work out for everyone. Like it has to work for their clients, most importantly, has to work for your clients second, and then the deal has to work for them and yourself. So
where did you get your skills from in dealing with these higher ticketed piece of land? The knowledge to network and market with other people? Was it a long, drawn-out process of experience, or was it just, you know, I guess what's the word? Just born with it. I guess I don't know. What's the?
Well, actually, I think that's more of a special question for my partner Jamie. I actually had a lot of the leads for these parcels of land in the beginning. At the beginning, I had no clients.
Right.
Like I didn't have any buyers. I started off with having like mostly leads for listings. So I had the product, and we just had to bring it to the right people, and that kind of like started that network of bring to the right people. These are the buyers. Okay, we have some other stuff to sell. Then we have some sellers. And then as soon as I started like advertising some of my own stuff that was on the commercial side, a lot of that kind of like, instead of getting buyer and seller leads on the residential side, it was, groups, investors, and other,
right.
Small developers, builders that were contacting me directly.
So it's interesting. I mean, it's not interesting because it should be pretty basic knowledge to people, but like it never hurts to network. Mm-hmm. It never hurts, right? Because I mean, you said you had leads. You just, you didn't know who was going to buy, like, right? You didn't know who was going to buy. So you went to Jamie. Jamie had the right people. You connected each other. Great, done deal, right? Everybody at the end of the day got what they wanted. They either made the money or got the, the property or whatever it was, right? So for you, was there any like challenges getting into doing this kind of stuff, learning lessons, anything like that you could maybe shed some light on?
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing is like patience. So especially right now in like on the residential side, when you're getting into a transaction, someone's buying or selling, you're listing their home, or you're helping someone buy a home, especially because the market's so competitive. There's like, other than, backing out of a home inspection, not being able to obtain financing, like those are like, or an SOP condition where
What's that?
Sale of property condition, where they were unable to sell their home. Like those are like some of the common scenarios where like someone would be able to like back out a deal, or a deal didn't happen.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So there's like, it's like, but like the market's so competitive. People just want to get in. They want their houses sold. The houses are selling, no conditions. So there's a very low probability, other than it not passing an appraisal, that the deal would fall apart. So being patient, that there's a lot more things and variables that can come up in a commercial transaction that, definitely can throw a little bit of a,
curveball,
bump in the road.
Yeah. Curveball, bump in the road, speed bump. Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, it definitely, you learn from experience, right? Like anything. I remember when I first started doing video, it was just me, right? I messed up like the audio on one, and then the next video I messed up like the visuals, but I got the audio good. And then the next video I messed up the lighting, but I got the visuals and the audio good. So I guess you take it through steps. When you were younger, was this an idea of yours? Hey, I want to be a real estate agent for land or for, commercial properties. What was your ideas? What it just goes to show, right? You can change paths throughout your entire life.
Yeah, I think like the biggest thing was that like as a kid, I never had a specific interest in it. I think as a kid I wanted to be like a lawyer. I can't remember, like a little kid or something. Yeah.
Well, which you're is kind of in the market.
Yeah, I deal with them every day. So.
Yeah, exactly, right? You're on the other side now.
Less headaches, actually.
Less headaches.
I feel bad for the lawyers.
Yeah, I bet, It's when it comes down to, I guess, like closing deals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So can I ask you, why would, is a more specific question, why would somebody go to a private lender rather than the bank, or vice versa? What are the different scenarios, different situations? Can you give us some information on that?
Yeah, so like for going to an A lender, like it's very good for like a tangible asset. So like something that you can prove to the bank that makes sense to them.
Right.
You're not like pitching them an idea or like something that has a timeline that you need to reach. So, commercial buildings, industrial buildings, residential homes are all like highly insurable by the bank. So like an A lender is fine for that. But when you're trying to get funding for like a multi-stage project that might need funding at certain stages through like the developmental project,
condo unit building type of thing,
or something like for servicing or other things like that. It also kind of pigeonholes you into like almost like kind of a limit, especially like how much an A lender will lend you. While going private really opens a lot of doors for basically anything you want to do. Depending on the lift on a project, you just kind of factor a higher interest rate into the cost of doing business. So like factor that into like say your servicing costs or your overhead costs for the development or a build or whatever you want to do that adds value to a project. You just kind of factor that in. Factor your 5 to 8% in to your profit, and it opens a lot more doors to getting funding.
So that's why. Okay, so that's interesting. So because I always wondered, like, I remember asking one of my guys, they bought a property, and I said, what they used a B lender, I guess. And I was like, well, why don't you just go to the bank? Like the bank will either like, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong. Like I want you to chime in here. Some people don't have enough cash flow to specifically get qualified for X amount of money, yet they are able to purchase the property. Some people don't want to go through the bank because they feel, like you said, like timelines and stuff like that.
It could be many different factors. Like most of them is some type of risk calculation that the bank creates that they would typically not go to a lender because they can't. That might just be because they have a private business that is new or not respected by the bank yet. They don't have months over months of proven income. So, but they could be making like 10 grand a month.
Right. Yeah.
But like
that's what's so crazy.
But it's just not proven
So
like
even,
they have to go to
I heard like some guy was like, I feel like I can make $1 million a year for the next 2 years and then just get qualified for like a loan from the bank because of there's like a 2-year rule, right?
Something like that. I think it's around there.
Yeah. Like you can't get qualified, I guess, for a mortgage. Self-employed is being hard. I'm sure. Anybody who's self-employed, I guess, knows, right? Like,
yeah. Well, if you open a new corporation, that's technically like a new person.
Oh, interesting.
A person that's 0 years old. So to the bank, they're nothing. Like they're just a new Canadian.
Oh, so that's why it's so important to get incorporated as soon as possible.
And start proving your corporation's worth.
Right. So when you're going to a B lender, you want to go to a B lender maybe because you don't want to deal with the bank. But the advantage for the B lender is that when they give you X amount of money for a project, they get higher interest rates, right?
And they'll most likely give you more money too.
And they'll give you more money, right?
A lot more, like depending on their risk profile. You obviously have to like present similar to a bank, like what you're doing, like what is your plan.
Right, like how you going to profit off this,
just like you would to a bank, but and it's probably a different way.
I guess there's a whole world of presenting to investors. It's crazy to me how one can make good money, off of being a guy who knows people to connect people, and the value in that is incredible for being able to build that network. So, what are like 3 things that I guess you maybe not even necessarily do now, but maybe 3 things that you would suggest somebody just getting started in any, I guess, industry, where I think networking is honestly most important in every single industry, and building strong, solid, trustworthy relationships and being loyal. What are like maybe 2 or 3 things that you would suggest to start building those stronger relationships for future projects or whatever that may look like?
So like the biggest thing is know like what your client needs. And one of the things, like if you have a client or you're new to them, so many people that are purchasing commercial or residential real estate as an investor or as a project or whatever, if they're already an established developer or builder, they already have a whole trove of realtors trying to be their realtor. So my advice to you would be to ask them, what are all those other realtors not giving you that I could bring to you? And that is like, every top investor in the area has probably a core of like 5, maybe more realtors that they rely on to provide them.
Yeah.
So the question to you should be, how can I be in that top 5?
Right. Okay, that's interesting because you want to be able to represent X person, right? Like Jimmy, you want to be able to represent Jimmy. But Jimmy's got realtors coming at him from every single angle. So like, how do you set yourself apart? Okay, that's interesting. So Aric, can you give us a little bit of what does like a day-to-day look like for you as the position that you're in? Is there any like a schedule of day-to-day, or is it more just like bing bang boom bop, we're here, we're there, we're here, we're there type of
There
thing?
is a lot of there is a lot of meetings that we do have, but I think like our day-to-day, at least lately, one thing I would like to touch on is, which is a really exciting time for living in Niagara, is the Niagara urban boundary expansion. So
Tell us about it.
yeah, so like right now, Niagara's going through like the largest, urban boundary expansion in the last 10 years, which is really exciting because, more and more people are trying to get into homes, trying to get into new construction homes, new jobs, new employment areas, new industrial areas that are being designated for job creation, which is exciting for the area. And so that's all being kind of dealt with right now on the regional level and the municipality level. And it designates a lot of areas which were nothing,
or farms, something,
and bringing them into employment areas, residential areas for new development, which is really exciting.
Wow.
And like, obviously you don't want to be taking down our nice vineyards and our nice peaches, but some of these farms, they just grow like soybean or like whatever crop. Like, I don't like, it's not important.
I know exactly what you mean.
I don't think it's that important to like the agricultural sector. I know soy is, but it's just a cash crop. If we could turn those into like an area where many jobs are created, or a new subdivision for new construction homes, or some other way of making more affordable housing, or retirement homes, that's important. We have a lot of people retiring right now, and it's like an unsatiable need for affordable housing, retirement homes, and new construction.
Well, I didn't even know that. We'll clip you on that, because that's great to hear, and that's great opportunity then for the economy here in Niagara.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. It's crazy. They actually squashed the urban boundary expansion in Hamilton last November. So they're also planning a huge expansion on the up the mountain. In the same scenario, a lot of like just open fields, and I guess like the local farmers, they voted against it, and they were working on it for many years, and it got completely squashed. Which Hamilton market.
Hamilton's
needed
more,
it.
Yeah,
they really needed it. They really needed that. So it kind of, people that were looking for new construction homes to get into a new home that are getting priced out of Burlington, already getting priced out of Hamilton. Now we have like Smithville, Niagara Falls, Big, and everywhere else.
So this is a really exciting. So like, that's actually really good to hear, because a lot of people were worried with for the average residential, like the families, with interest rates going up, and then they just promised to go up 4 more times in the next 6 months, and everything kind of happening. It was a little bit scary. It was like, okay, is the housing market going to like really take a hit here? What are the banks going to do? But now to hear this, maybe it'll slow, but development won't. It doesn't sound like, because we're still in a housing shortage to this day. And it seems like this would be an exciting time to buy. Like, and especially people who have money to buy. Like, I'm talking like a couple $1 million to put into properties, and you even buy the land and then have that. And then somebody, comes and approaches them and say, hey, we want to build, 400 condo units on this piece of property. How much is it going to cost to buy it off you? Right. And then there's that want. Sounds like it's a great time to invest.
Yeah. And another thing is like, what's really important is redevelopment. You like finding new utility for old uses.
Right.
There's a lot of vacant parking lots, old motels.
Downtown St. Catharines is bad.
There's a lot of old industrial buildings in Hamilton and other areas that they're repurposing, either knocking them down or just completely repurposing the building. I think that's really important for restructuring like higher density to try to really get a hold of the entry point for many families trying to get into the market.
Interesting. Oh, I'm actually excited to hear that, because that means that, we'll start to see some more growth here in Niagara. A good economy is always good for everybody. I think to go touch back on your point about, the agricultural side of things, and, with everything, when there's a reward for this type of people, then there's, I guess a negative impact for these type of people. But there's always going to be pivots in business, and there's always going to be things that people have to change in doing. I mean, look at it's been the last 50 years we've seen, you know, people pivoting into different directions and how their business has to be done. Look at Netflix completely wiped out Blockbuster, right? Like Blockbuster, they had the opportunity to pivot, they didn't, right? And they saw the consequences of that. But you know, I think Niagara on the Lake, we're here in Niagara on the Lake. I think we're gonna be okay because I think it's so stubborn down here with, you know, the wineries and everything like that. But I definitely think St. Catharines, we could see a lot more development going on. Welland, what are your thoughts on Welland right now? I've been seeing a lot of new developments in Welland going on and advantages there. Is that a good place to invest? Like, what would you talk about Welland right now?
So like one of the hottest areas in Welland would be the Welland, Thorold, Pelham corridor, which would probably be around Quaker, Rice Road area. Those are like where three municipalities intersect. Lots of development happening in that area. There's lots of new construction. I think the bottleneck that I would like to talk about
go ahead.
is the municipalities' sanitary and water systems. We can't, there's a lot of lag. Look at the new hospital that's going in. So they can't build that until they, bring sewer and water to that area.
Interesting. And that goes back to your past.
So you kind of like, it's hard. Everyone, you see in the news, everyone wants to point fingers at developers and, builders.
They get a lot of the heat,
right? They do, but they actually get down to like the, municipal level. People are flooding down here, down in Niagara because they can't afford in Burlington. Well, Burlington, Oakville, up through the GTA, obviously the Greenbelt.
Yeah.
A lot of that, I do not condone eliminating conservation in protected areas, but a lot of that is actually aerially mapped. So it's all like it's so large, and they don't have the resources to determine what is, conservation, what's environmental protection. It's all aerially mapped from a helicopter. So you'd actually have to like set up meetings. They go out there with teams and actually determine, okay, maybe this acre can actually be, it wasn't here. It's actually just light brush. So a lot of that could actually probably be restructured. We could have a lot more affordable housing being built through the GTA and not having people driving 2 hours from Niagara to go to the GTA.
So there's some wasted space in that area there.
Yeah. Once they open up the Greenbelt in a more educated way that, doesn't affect natural resources and, natural protection areas, but, restructure in a way of like, what can we actually use if they put a little more work into opening up certain sections that, didn't affect wildlife and natural heritage systems like that. We'd have all new construction up a lot more closer to the GTA, more little satellite neighborhoods that have people not driving such a far distance. Yeah,
like you're starting to see now, like I drove by a beautiful development in Niagara Falls. I mean, I can't remember the address. It was kind of by Dorchester Road area, and right by the water. And they're building like a couple hundred homes. Not so cookie cutter, but definitely like a little bit more cookie cutter. But they're building nice homes, nice developments, and we're starting to see more of that. Empire went in and built up in Welland, just off the highway, like a bunch load of homes, right? And like I guess we're starting to see more of that. Do you think we can expect to see over the next 10 years? Like you said, the urban expansion plan, we can start to expect to see a lot of that more happening, right? Like more in sporadic areas.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing is, the timeline of that is sometimes affected by the city's infrastructure. Yeah. And, you look COVID, a lot of municipalities working from home over the last 2 years. So it's kind of been a little bit of a snail pace, especially getting approvals and, the municipalities, expanding waterways and sewer to certain areas to make sure that they can sustain all this new growth has definitely been a challenge for them. Yeah. And they're just kind of getting back on their feet. They're obviously very understaffed and just kind of trying to meet the demand of all this development that's happening here.
Which is fair. I mean, everybody can, point fingers at this person or that person or this person, but it all leads up to one head at the top, right? And so it's interesting to see like where we can kind of see us bounce back from everything that's happened in the last couple of years. It sounds like, I had no idea. So I'm glad you brought up the urban expansion plan. That's good for business for for even if housing prices do drop or slow in terms of like buying, we can start to see more volume. And that's fantastic. One of the biggest issues, I guess, I was talking to a real estate agent about, well, a couple of them actually, and they were saying, you know, we have buyers, but now we don't have sellers. Before we had sellers, we just didn't have as many buyers. And then it kind of, now it's balancing out, but we need to see the prices match with the higher interest rates in the last couple of months, right? Do you think that we're going to start to see that in the next couple of months, or?
Well, if you've been paying it, at least on the resale side, this is kind of taking a jump to the residential side. But if you've paid attention to the average sale price in the last 2 months, we've clipped off $100,000 on the average sale price.
Are you for real?
Months.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think it was almost at 900,000, and it's back down to 8 in a very short amount of time. That's like, put that on the graph of the basis points that are going to be added. I think we have 3 more basis points that are going to be added through the fall. You're going to continue to see a fear of, you know, people searching and you know, getting on either in a variable rate that's going to continue going up. So that's kind of stressful, especially, you know, in terms of approvals, getting pre-approved for a certain mortgage. But you are going to see, until we, like right now, we're still getting a bit of push for people to get locked into a 5-year rate just because we're still seeing an increase. But I think we're definitely going to see a little bit more of a downward correction, probably till the fall, maybe further, depending on if the banks announce even more increases in interest rates.
Well, I got to be honest. You know, I appreciate the honesty that you just gave us. I mean, being a realtor, right? It obviously, you know, you want the housing prices to be as high as they possibly can, just like the sellers do, right?
I don't.
You don't. Okay. Sorry to just assume there, but give me a little bit of background on, like, for you, what's it like?
Yeah. So also look at like what people have been dealing with the last 2 years. So obviously everyone wants the highest prices. So you see ads on the radio. You'll be in your car and you hear a radio. I guarantee you'll get the highest price. Yeah. But what about the buyer? What about the buyer? What about when I'm representing the buyer? I'll make you pay the highest price. Oh, shit. So, you know, like, you kind of have a little bit of that going on, and you definitely want to, you know, be respectful of, like, both sides of the transaction. And also, like, the last 3 years, you've had a really high chance of not getting appraised when people are paying $200,000 over asking price, and they're forced to go in firm because they're competing on 20 other offers. It's a really high risk. They don't really realize, if they haven't been educated, how high of a risk, you know, situation they can be in, especially if they can't close and lose their deposit if it was their fault. So, you know, that $25,000 or whatever, or maybe $20,000 deposit, that, you know, it's a lot, like, for someone to lose that,
especially for a family, like,
you got to be really, I'm really glad that things are going to be a little more even kiltered, because you can only have an unbalanced market for so long, and there's been a lot of patient, frustrated buyers that are starting to, you know, get a little more comfortable and not so frightened from the market. That it's good. It's good for the market. It's good for the lender not taking on a really high risk mortgage. They have to, like, do last minute comparables of a house that sold $250,000 over ask. So it's a safer bet for the banks, puts you in a less sketchy situation.
Yeah. I was going to say,
same for the seller. You know, say there's like a 2-3 month close, things can happen in the market in those 3 months. So the fact that deal might not close because the market's been so crazy, that it also hurts the seller too. It's
been like crypto recently. Okay, so there was an announcement, and like, I don't know everything about real estate, but I heard that there was talks of some form of, like, open bidding or something. Can you shed us some light? Like, first of all, give us, like, quick 20-30 seconds. Like, what is this? What are they announcing? What's actually happening? Give us some of the facts, and then give us, you know, your thoughts on it. Is this good or bad?
So I think that it's right. I think the pilot program is going, they're trying on certain markets, probably that were chosen. I'm not sure, that have a high rate of, like, underpricing and overbidding. Probably. I don't know the exact areas, but I think they're in the GTA. But that whole program was sampled from Australia, where they do open bidding, which is basically eBay style bidding, where you see
they have them on the TV shows, eh?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if that's gonna help or not. Like I think, like you see how like say you're ordering something on eBay and there's a time limit and the price keeps going up and people are like, yeah, I'm gonna bid higher. Is that gonna have a negative effect?
You know what? Actually, you make a really good point because
it's like makes it more competitive.
Yeah, and in fact, I didn't even think about that. I actually thought, the open bidding, me not really knowing much about real estate, and me more being the average person. Oh, it sounds great. Like I can know the price of the home. Or what the actual bidding is. Yeah. That's not always good because that can feed there's a website you can buy like crashed cars, like Porsches or Teslas that are like super high in
Copart.
Is that what it's called?
I think it's called, yeah.
And they're genius because they have literally a bar that it's only like 5 seconds. And so you see people just, do you want to go 276,000, 276 or 278,000? And it's like just constant. Yeah. And there's less thinking involved. Don't we want to encourage more thinking?
Well, I think that like the whole goal of the canceling of blind bidding is just to not have scenarios where someone unknowingly paid like 50 to 100,000 more than the last bid for no reason.
Which we're starting to see a lot of.
So
people are pushing that.
Yeah, and that like I've already kind of explained like the issues that causes in terms of financing and everything. But I think it's just to kind of get a little bit of and also put other realtors on notice of the kind of off the cuff things that can sometimes happen when you're in a multiple offer scenario.
Right.
And those deals need to be handled very delicately, especially when you're dealing with 20 other realtors. Everyone needs to be informed at the correct time, fairly, So they're kind of trying to, because there hasn't been perfect compliance, there's a lot of complaints and issues that you probably may have heard in the news and stuff like that. Yeah. I think that's good. They're just trying to get a hold of some of the issues that have been created with all these scenarios of competitive bidding.
Interesting. Okay, well, Aric, Devin's probably telling me, yo, Sam, we got to end this soon. But thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
This is actually a really educational talk. And if you didn't learn something, obviously you weren't listening. Because in my opinion, I learned a lot. So appreciate your opinions and views and explaining to us today the urban expansion program, where Niagara's headed. Yes or no, or maybe, or is this like maybe a 1 minute answer? I'll ask you one last question. Is now a good time to invest into residential / commercial property?
Yeah, I would say it's still a really good time to invest, like especially on the commercial side. Commercial is really picking up, and if you don't already have an asset that you could borrow against in the future, you should get one.
Yeah. No, I hear you. It's a smart investment, right? Just in case, or even if you want to make more investments in the future. Right.
Absolutely.
So, Aric, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. So stay tuned for more episodes like these. If you like the more educational style, Aric gave us a lot of insight. We didn't get to talk too much about your past or anything like that, but I appreciate you kind of teaching everybody today. Stay tuned. Make sure to follow us on YouTube, subscribe, and follow us on Instagram. Thank you so much, guys, and all the best. Cheers. Thank you for listening to this week's Golden Guest on the Meeting Gold podcast. If you learned something from today's episode, make sure to check out our other content on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, make sure to leave us a follow while you're there. Thanks, and have a golden day.